Alrighty, week 11 is here. Holy crap, this season is flying by. We had quite a week of games this week, including a Monday night game, which saw my potential huge value pick do absolutely squat outside of a 1-yard touchdown, Mr. LaShawn McCoy. Let's take a trip back to Week 10 to our value picks, and let's see how we did with those picks before we dive into Week 11. We'll run through these guys here. Alex, keep me honest if I'm giving any bad information.
Got it.
We recommended Matt Ryan had a decent game. Bobby Rainey, who was MIA. Charles Sims. What's
They
that?
both suck, but we did say, at least I said, I don't know if you said, you kind of advised on Rainey, but I said don't touch either of them because we don't really know how it's going to shake up with Sims. And
Right.
It's a good play not to play both of them.
Yeah, they ate it. I mean, we both recommended against Sims. I'll continue to recommend against him until we see something out of him, but Rainey burned me pretty bad. Let's see. Cam Newton,
Garbage.
I
I don't care if he had those 2 touchdowns at the end of the game. That was just a miserable performance. He looked hurt the whole time. They should have taken him out way earlier.
You gotta take that out of it though, because from a fantasy perspective, yeah, he threw those 2 picks, but he still got you 300 plus yards and 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, so he had a good day, but going forward, I don't like him at all right now.
We're talking DFS, so you don't have to like him.
Right, but
It's
still,
okay.
when you get 2 touchdowns, you're supposed to be like, oh, well, maybe he can do decent things the rest of the year. No, those 2 touchdowns were fluky fantasy touchdowns that I'm glad I had in my lineup yesterday, even though I lost, but it still made it pretty close. But going forward, until Cam looks healthy, I'm not touching him.
All right, we recommended his main target, Kelvin, who got you some nice garbage time touchdowns as well. He was a hell of a value for $4,200 on DraftKings.
Great garbage time, though, for him.
Sanchez came in. He did almost exactly what we said he was going to do, right? He gave you that 2-touchdown floor, threw for a lot more yards than I expected, but that entire Carolina team just looked awful. So I wouldn't. I'll just leave it at that. LaShawn McCoy, we already mentioned how he killed me. Zach Ertz, I again wanted to stay away from him. Just putting it out there. Jeremy Hill, Mohamed Sanu, AJ Green. Blech. That entire Cincy Thursday game was just brutal to watch. Oh God,
Yep.
I don't even want. Let's not even spend time on it. Julius Thomas, what up? Michael Rivera again getting in the end zone.
Yep.
Andre Holmes, how did he do?
Let me check. I don't know. He might have been the one that got in the end zone, but for some reason I don't think so.
While you're checking that, can you also take a look at Kenbrell Tompkins? I don't think he
did anything.
But we had him as a pure speculation punt play anyway, so we weren't really expecting much out of him.
Andre Holmes had 1 target, no catches.
So Andre Holmes blew. Okay. Jamal
Tompkins,
Charles.
Hold on.
Oh yeah,
Jamal
look
Charles
up
had a good
Tompkins.
day. Tompkins had 0 targets. So that was a fun day for the Raiders.
Alrighty. Jamal Charles got in the end zone, almost had 100 yards, had a pretty good day. Brandon Cooks had a huge day as well, loved him. Larry Donnell, that Giants offense in the second half just looked rough. They got roughed up. Russell Wilson had a decent day. He got you over 100 rushing yards again, I think, right? So he ran for a touchdown as well. I don't think he threw for a touchdown, but he got you in the end zone.
took all the touchdowns.
Yes, thank you. Paul Richardson obviously suffered then. Percy Harvin ate it.
Can we just say one thing that I saw from what I've seen? That was his first. He got his first target in the red zone all season.
Okay.
I mean, it was a contested play. He maybe could have came down with it, but it was encouraging to see that getting the ball thrown at him in the end zone.
And regardless, just like Ken Brell, he was a pure punt play in which we said don't expect much out of him. So it's not like we were touting him to have a great week, like we were with Percy Harvin, that son of a bitch.
Hey, leave him alone. We won a football game.
Yeah, that's not here
I
nor
don't
there.
care
That
if Purse
cost me money.
0 targets. If we win a football game, Purse is doing his job.
Cost me money. Martavis Bryant, though, blew up thanks to that 80-yard touchdown.
The end
Uh,
of the game in
the
garbage
very,
time. That was a
very end of
that
the
was a
game, which I
win-win for
love.
me. That was a win-win for me.
Exactly. You got the win, and you got fantasy points, so it's
My
beautiful in
team is
my
being a
eyes.
stud.
Absolutely beautiful. All righty, let's take a look then. Oh, hang on. Sorry about that. Let's take a look at Week 11. Let's dive right into. I'll go with. I have no idea what order this is actually. Who's playing this Thursday? We've got
Oh, that's the Buffalo
Miami,
Miami game.
Miami Buffalo, and we don't really see any value picks out of that game, so we're just going to jump right by it. Let's go to Atlanta and Carolina. A lot of you have been clamoring for defensive picks, and I think that if you watched any of that Monday night game, Carolina against Philly, you saw what Philly's defense did. Atlanta's defense at 2,800 in DraftKings, 4,600 in FanDuel. I mean, that Carolina offensive line did nothing to help Cam out. They've got no running game whatsoever. Kelvin is the only receiving option out. Him and Greg Olsen. I look at Atlanta as a nice defensive play this week. I think we'll just leave it at that, and we'll move on to some skill players. In this game, our value pick go for quarterback going to Matt Ryan, 6,400 in DraftKings, 7,700 in FanDuel. And let's talk about Roddy White as a stack there, right? Going for 5,500 in DraftKings, 6,800 in FanDuel. Not much to say outside of it's Matt Ryan and Roddy White going up against a terrible Carolina secondary. Anything else to add?
I mean, I would rather play Julio Jones because you know how I feel about Julio Jones. But the way that Jordan Matthews tore up that secondary as finally the number 2 receiver in Philly because of Sanchez, I think that they got a little extra work together because of his time as a backup. Finally, Riley Cooper is not getting those stupid targets that nobody needs. Jordan Matthews had a game, and I don't know if it was from a talent perspective and him being able to create a mismatch, or if it's just that they weren't able to really get Macklin involved because some decent cornerback play, or they focused on him like maybe the Panthers will do against Julio, which will leave Roddy White open. But I think Julio's too good not to have the better day.
I think you and I have gone back and forth on this in the past, and I think Julio's really that he's kind of like Megatron in the sense that he's almost matchup proof, right? I don't think we've seen one defensive back that can hold down Julio. And the only way that Carolina is going to stop Julio and Roddy is to give up their entire secondary, right? So I like Roddy as the value pick here, but I agree with you. Julio still isn't a bad play, and I'd probably go with Julio over Roddy in a cash game anyway.
See, the thing that I like more about Julio is Julio, without getting in the end zone, still had more points than Roddy White when he got in the end zone this week. So that's, for me, like,
it's a big deal,
Julio isn't going to be kept out of the end zone all the time. And if he does, his floor looks to be at around 7 catches for 100 yards. So that's somebody that, I know he's not really a value play this week because he's 7,000, right. But that price is pretty cheap for a guy that I consider a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL.
I'll agree. Let's flip over to the other side. Really, the only play that we saw here was Kelvin. Again, you've seen what he can do all season, really making these circus catches. He looked pretty good against Philly at the very end of the game there when they finally were able to throw him the ball. 4,900 in DraftKings, 6,600 in FanDuel. This Atlanta secondary sucks probably just as bad as Carolina, maybe a little bit better.
Maybe a little more, maybe a little worse.
Yeah, depending on the day, yeah.
They gave up a huge day to Mike Evans, so that's why I would definitely say, Kelvin, you can play him again this week and expect a touchdown at minimum.
Yeah, and this game is in Carolina, so I usually advise against taking Falcons outside of the dome, but this I will make a grand exception this week.
Let's hope it doesn't come to bite us in the ass, because I need the Falcons to do well.
You do have a lot invested in them, but all right. So there's our Falcons-Carolina game. Next up, we've got the Vikings-Bears game. And in Chicago, same thing as if you saw the Monday night game, if you saw the Sunday night game, you saw just how bad that Chicago, the entire team looked. Coming off the bye, Minnesota's defense, I like it. They're 3,000 in DraftKings, 4,900 in FanDuel. I'm not recommending them as a high play because Chicago still has Marshall, Alshon, Martellus, Forte. I mean, they've still got pound for pound probably the best set of skill players in the league at those positions. You can probably argue that maybe Denver's the only one with skill players that good at every single position. Chicago's offensive line just looked terrible, and they made a big deal out of it on the show. That was like their 6 different offensive line combination used or starting this year. So keep an eye on that. If there's no continuity in that line, and you're looking for a cheaper defensive play, Minnesota's there for you. At the same token, the entire Minnesota offense we're going to take a look at. Not saying they're going to do what the Packers did, because obviously the Packers are a bit more skilled in most positions than the Vikings, but Bridgewater going for 5,900 in DraftKings, 6,600 in FanDuel. Can we pair him with Kyle Rudolph, who's potentially back this week, 3,600 in DraftKings, or Cordero Patterson, who's 3,800 in DraftKings, 6,000 in FanDuel? I know you said you don't like Cordero, so talk to me a little more about Kyle this week, and then we'll get into Cordero after.
I just really like Kyle Rudolph. The man has banana hands. Like, those hands are probably the biggest set of hands in the NFL.
You scared me. I thought you were going banana hammock.
No, I won't. I refuse. We were expecting huge things from Rudolph this year, especially when Bridgewater was going to be named the starting quarterback. I think we all kind of expected that to happen around when it did, around week 5. And just Kyle Rudolph being the security blanket for a rookie quarterback, just being that huge red zone threat. And I feel like they haven't really had that, because every time they're on the goal line, they just hand the ball off to Matt Asiata now, because they don't have big wide receivers. Cordarrelle's pretty big, but he's not a good route runner. Greg Jennings isn't the biggest. Jarius Wright isn't big either, and they've just kind of had a rotating door at tight end while Rudolph's out. But when Rudolph's in, he's shown over the past bunch of years that when he's in the red zone, ball's coming down with banana hands. So I like Rudolph. I mean, I kind of want to wait a week to see if he's healthy, but the way that the Bears play against the tight end, it's a decent high risk, high reward play if he plays.
So
I just don't know what to make of this Bears team. Like, I feel like this week they could look like they did last year and have a fantastic day, or they could just look like they did against your Packers again and just be awful.
I feel like it's going to be in the middle, right? I think Teddy Bridgewater is not Aaron Rodgers. He's not an elite QB, at least not yet, right? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt since he's a rookie, but he's not an elite quarterback.
He's not Aaron Rodgers. Come on, we can say that he's not going to ever be Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, I won't argue with that. But he could have a couple of touchdowns here. I think Cordero Patterson could get open. I mean, you saw they have rookie starters in that secondary. You saw Jordy Nelson on that first touchdown pass literally run right by the defensive back as he stood still. I mean, Cordero Patterson can do that same thing. So that's why I don't mind Cordero, especially at $3,800. I'm not expecting a ton, right? I think he still has that low floor, but I think his ceiling is through the roof because of how bad that secondary played. Now, let's take a look then at McKinnon, who we both like this week, 4,800 on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel. Their run defense has also been pretty terrible. And looking at how Lacey scored, I mean, Lacey ran for 100 yards on them the first time they played. He caught a 60-some-odd yard screen pass for a touchdown this time. I mean, I think McKinnon can do the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. McKinnon is probably one of the more talented running backs in the league right now between the 20s. They don't give him the ball in the red zone. They kind of limit his touches because They want to keep him healthy for the stretch run when they eventually get rid of Adrian Peterson. But he is a guy that can break those big-time home run plays.
That's exactly what I wanted to get at, right? So yeah, Asiata is the fantasy football antichrist, right?
He's Mike Tolbert. He is Mike Tolbert. He is Mike Tolbert reincarnate.
And Jerome Bettis, right? So
see, but Jerome Bettis at least had some years where he was really good.
At the beginning, yeah, but towards the end, he literally had a game where he had
Matt Asiata is nothing more than Mike. All right, Mike Allstock. That's what I'm at Asiata.
Okay, I'll
give you that. A couple
good
games here and there when he's given all of the carries because he can plot his way to 60 yards and like 12 goal line scores.
Sure, but I like McKinnon's explosiveness against this defense because they're susceptible to the big play, and McKinnon can get you that. So I like him a lot as a tournament play this week. Moving on, like I said, Chicago skill players, all very talented, all very expensive still. We didn't see any as real value picks in this game. Moving on to the Saints hosting the Bengals. Let's go then to Thursday night's game. You saw how poorly Andy Dalton played at home against the Browns. New Orleans defense has stepped up and doing a lot better. They're better at home than on the road. Cincy coming into New Orleans. I like New Orleans D as a play here, 2,900 in DraftKings, 4,700 in FanDuel. Not saying that Dalton's going to have the exact same game he just did because that was epically bad, but he, in that dome, it is loud. It probably will shake him. I mean, we're not going to see an offensive storm from Cincinnati this week either. But looking at how poorly their defense played as well and how poorly their defense has been all year, let's look at Mark Ingram, who's been very good the past few weeks. 6,200 in DraftKings, 8,000 in FanDuel. So you're seeing, I think, more value on the DraftKings side. But do we think he has it in him to get another 100-yard game?
Yeah, Terrence West had 94 yards and a touchdown. Ben Tate scored a touchdown, and Crowell scored a touchdown against this defense. Mark Ingram's going for 102 scores because New Orleans is just going to not look anything like what we expected them to look like, especially after the first 3 games of the season. We thought that the Bengals could be one of the best teams in football early on, and they just have plummeted since, and they just can't stop anybody on the ground. I like the way Ingram's running. He's running confidently. He's running like he was running in Alabama, and that just angry, powerful, just confident style of running that just made him what he was at Bama, and it kind of never really translated into the NFL until now. And now that he's finally getting those touches and he's been given the workhorse workload. Like, without Pierre Thomas and without Kyrie in the mix, like, he only kind of comes out for Cadet occasionally. So he's going to keep getting those 20-touch games, and 20 touches for Mark Ingram, that's a safe 100 yards as it gets.
What they're doing, what I'm seeing, what I think they're doing, I mean, he's running like an animal because it's his contract year. They're feeding him the ball because they're not going to keep him after this year. So they're getting as much out of him right now as they possibly can. And I think as fantasy players over the past several weeks, if you've played him, you're getting as much as you possibly can out of him, especially with those injuries like you mentioned. So again, going up against this defense, they looked average at best against that 3-headed rushing attack for the Browns. So look for Ingram to have another decent day on Sunday.
And the thing is that, like, all right, sorry to interrupt, but the 3 running backs for the Browns didn't even look good. They didn't look good that whole game. Like, other than like a run or 2 from West and like a catch or 2 from Ben Tate, they didn't really look all that good. But they all got in the end zone. They all kind of produced with their carries, and like they ran. What did they run the ball? I think it was 40 times, 26, 10, and 12, so 38 times on the ground, plus 4 rushes for Hoyer. So they ran the ball 42 times.
52.
Oh, yeah, my math is, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm usually good at math. That doesn't make any sense. I just did it real quick. Yeah, but 52 times, and how many times did Hoyer throw the ball? I don't even know.
Not many, but I'm just going to throw a quick caveat out there that we've got to make sure that Pierre Thomas and Kyrie Robinson are both out. I'm not positive if they're both missing this week yet. Obviously, the injury reports come out tomorrow. But if they do both miss Sunday, Ingram's obviously the guy. If one or both of them are there, I don't think Ingram gets those 20 touches like he's been getting, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I get that, but even if they come back, unless he's struggling, I don't really see them not giving him the ball. This is one of those situations where he's really clearly established himself as the guy that's better than than all three. I mean, I personally like Kyrie more for the future, but for right now, Ingram has established that he is the guy in this backfield, and I think Peyton knows that. They like to rely on one back as much as they can. Although they will get Thomas and Kyrie involved in passing downs, I still think in terms of handing the ball off, he likes to keep it as one guy that he knows is going to give him 5 tough yards every time he gives him the ball.
All right, let's move on. So we've got Colston there as well. I threw him in there. He's 4,100 in DraftKings, 6,100 in FanDuel. I threw him in there not because I think he's going to have a great day. I think that Brandon Cooks will have the better day. I think that Colston will probably get Adam Jones on him, who's a tough defensive back. But I just threw him in here because at that price point, we have to talk about him at home against Cincy. Practically a punt play. I mean, it's a very low floor, medium level ceiling. I'm not that confident, but again, at that price point, had to just bring him up. Let's move on then to our next game, Denver and St. Louis. Let's see who's going where. Can I find that game? The Broncos are traveling to St. Louis. We've seen week in and week out that St. Louis turns the ball over. So Denver's defense here, 3,000 on DraftKings, 5,200 on FanDuel. Another play for you if you're looking for some turnovers, perhaps potential for probably a better potential for a pick six than anybody else this week. So your Denver defense is an okay pick right there at 3,000 in DraftKings. Flipping to the other side though, let's try to get some value again at some position players. It kind of hurts me to recommend this guy, so I want you to talk about him for a little bit. The Denver against tight ends has not been great, as we've seen the past couple weeks. So Jared Cook, 3,500 in DraftKings, 5,400 in FanDuel. Are you really thinking about putting him into one of your tournament lineups here?
Yeah, that big touchdown last week, and Denver can't really stop tight ends. They let Michael Rivera get in the end zone. Who'd they play 2 weeks ago? I know whoever they played got in the end zone. Sorry, I'm blanking right now.
But he only had 2 catches, right? I mean, he had the one big play, but only 2 catches.
Rivera?
No, Cook.
Yeah, but I think without Quick in that lineup, like he's getting more upside targets. If you kind of get what I'm trying to say with that, he's getting more valuable targets. It's not just like, oh, you're my third or fourth option on this passing play. No, we're going to get you open, and we want you to get yardage kind of plays where he's going to run through the intermediate routes, or he's going to go a little deeper than he normally does. Instead of got Quick and Britt on the outside, we get the ball to Tavon Austin, and then maybe we get Cook involved. I think now without Quick, it's kind of Tavon will keep you short. Britt, you can go deep and long, and then Cook, you got to take over the middle of the field for us. So I think especially for the red zone, I mean, I know that Kendricks could potentially vulture one of those touchdowns in the red zone like he has a lot of this year, but as a tournament play against the team that really just doesn't really look to cover the tight end, especially at the end of the game, because if this game goes the way we all think it is, Denver's going to be out to a big lead like they always are, and then at the end of the game, it's going to be one of those, here, Jared Cook, catch the ball in the end zone, and he can do that.
That's what. So you're hoping for it, right?
Yeah, it's a hope and a pray of a tournament shot. It's not a 50-50.
Yeah, okay. Next game, my Green Bay Packers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles come into Green Bay, and for that reason, we're looking at Mark Sanchez. I threw Green Bay's defense in here, 3,100 on DraftKings, 4,800 on FanDuel. I don't trust Sanchez all that much, really. I don't trust him to not turn the ball over, right? He had a very, very favorable matchup this past week when he played Houston. He threw 2 picks, one of which was his fault, one wasn't. The Packers secondary is much, much better than Carolina's. They're going to force him to throw the ball. I think they're going to be able to stack the box and say, listen, we're going to put your receivers one-on-one and try to beat us. That's my opinion. I like him to throw a pick. So in saying that, I'll walk right into Mark Sanchez as a value play this week, 5,800 on DraftKings, 6,900 on FanDuel. I'm personally staying away from him. I don't think, again, that he'll hit the numbers that he hit this week. I don't think he's hitting next week. That secondary, again, much better. I think they're going to rely on the tight end more. They're going to rely on short passes or short runs more. Their run game is going to get better this week. Their pass game is going to suffer. So that's why I'm staying away from Sanchez. In saying that, Jordan Matthews, why don't you give your opinion of Jordan Matthews this week at 4,500 on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel? Do you think he can play or get the targets like he did this week against Green Bay?
I'm just going to start off by saying that I refuse to speak about anything that is related to Mark Sanchez ever again. Don't ask me questions about Mark Sanchez. I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. And knowing my luck, he'll probably lead the Eagles to a championship 3 years in a row because he used to be the Jets quarterback, and that's just the way.
All right, come on.
Anyway, Jordan Matthews, though. When Sanchez came in, I feel like Jordan Matthews kind of got a second jolt, if you know what I'm saying. Because like we've heard kind of when they're talking about Mark Sanchez and being prepared because the way that offense run, it goes so fast that he actually winds up getting practice reps. I feel like a lot of those reps were with Jordan Matthews. Just the way they've looked early on in these 2 games that Sanchez has been in. Jordan Matthews is an extremely talented wide receiver. He actually looks like Terrell Owens out there right now. I mean, not quite to Terrell Owens level, but in terms of just looking at the screen standpoint and a pure talent standpoint, he looks like he's Terrell Owens out there. And that's great news for the Eagles. That's great news for this passing attack. The thing is that Riley Cooper was the guy that Foles kind of leaned on when Macklin wasn't open or somebody else wasn't open or they weren't running the ball. And you and I just kind of felt that was just a really stupid plan for that Eagles offense. And I feel like Sanchez has Matthews as that guy as opposed to Cooper. I know Cooper still was getting some stupid targets. I don't even know why he's on the field at any point anymore. But Matthews has really run with this chance to play with Mark Sanchez. I feel like they have some chemistry going that we didn't really realize they had earlier in the year. And sorry. But I like Jordan Matthews.
You're rambling saying the same thing.
I'm sorry. I really like Jordan Matthews. He's part of this receiver class, and we're going to get to this on Thursday, that I think is probably the best receiver class any of us have ever seen.
So a lot of what you said, actually, I mean, they mentioned it in the preseason, right? They said he looked incredible running his routes. They reminded a lot of people of Terrell Owens in the preseason. All he had to do was climb the depth chart, right? And it seems like he did that. Like you said to me off air, it seems like they had a connection, kind of like Mettenberger to Hunter, right? How preseason they played together. It's probably second team they played together. They have a connection. Maybe Matthews has the most targets this Sunday, but at the same time, again, Green Bay's secondary is very good. I'm personally staying away from the Eagles receivers and definitely the quarterback. Sanchez way too risky for me. But for everything you said, I can understand the play of Matthews, and he'll be a contrarian play this weekend anyway. So again, another reason I can understand playing him. But let's jump games now. We got to keep moving here. Going to Oakland and San Diego. That game is in San Diego. Not that it matters. They're a couple hours away, I believe. Let's start on the Oakland side. Derek Carr going for
No.
5,100
Just
in
no.
DraftKings,
Just no. I'm sorry.
6,600 in FanDuel. Despite what you're saying, he puts up fantasy points.
Didn't
That's all
last
I'm
week.
gonna.
The 1 week I told people to play him, especially in regular fantasy, it's like, oh, I need a quarterback. Everybody's hurt and everybody's on bye. Who should I play? Derek Carr. He's going against the Broncos. What did he do? He did nothing. Yes, he puts up points, but I think at San Diego, the Chargers are going to be ready for him this time. He had a great game in Oakland against San Diego, but this is a completely different. They're going up against the Chargers, who are coming out of the bye, and they are ready for Derek Carr this time. It is not going to go well for Carr this week. I'm sorry, it's just not.
They're not coming out of the bye, are they?
The Chargers are,
I thought
and
they
they're in
had.
San Diego. Right? I think they're in San Diego.
They are in San Diego, yeah.
No Derek Carr.
And they're okay. So they're coming off that embarrassment from Week 9.
And a bye to think about it.
That's
This
what they're
isn't going
coming
well
off
for
of.
Derek Carr, I can promise you that.
So that's all well and great, right? So maybe you look at the Chargers defense, which I didn't highlight here, but Derek Carr threw 47 times in the past 3 games, 47, 41, 54 times. I mean, he's only thrown under 30 times twice this year. I mean, he's getting the opportunities to get you points. Not saying he is getting you points, but he's getting the opportunities for that.
Yeah.
I can definitely agree with you that San Diego will not lose 37-0 this Sunday. But Derek Carr, 5,100, pure speculation tournament play in DraftKings and FanDuel. Had to mention him just because of the opportunities he's given. And let's talk again about his tight end very briefly. 3,100 on DraftKings, no respect. 5,800 on FanDuel.
It's the matchup, though, I think, that his price has dropped. This is a tougher matchup.
Still, if Carr's throwing the ball 47 times a game or 40 times a game, Rivera's going to get his fair share of targets, I think. He's shown that over the past few weeks.
Yeah, he had in the last 3 weeks before barely being targeted, it's been 9, 11, and 8 for 7, 8, and 6 catches. So he's a guy, like I've been saying for weeks. They're getting him involved into this offense, and he's becoming a guy that you can trust as a tight end. I never thought I would say that at the beginning of the year, but he's somebody that one of the more trustworthy tight ends at this point. He's more trustworthy than Ertz and Kelsey, and you know how much I love the two of them. But right now, you can count on Rivera's production, and you can't count on Ertz or Kelsey, even if they have the higher ceiling.
So let's flip over to the other side then. Ryan Matthews, if healthy and playing, going for 4,500 on DraftKings, 6,200 on FanDuel. The Oakland run defense, I believe, wasn't too bad.
Well, Hillman got hurt,
awful?
and CJ had that dump-off pass that he took to the house.
Yeah, so I'm not too sure how to judge Oakland. I haven't watched them much this year, but, I mean, you see people putting up points against them. So if you got a skill player at that price, you kind of have to take advantage in at least one lineup, right?
Yeah, I mean, Matthews is the guy in that offense. When he comes back, he's going to get the ball. And without Woodhead in there, and, I mean, obviously...
Take Brandon Oliver out, right? Put him back.
He's not going to come out. He's kind of going to fill that Woodhead role, but I don't think he's going to get as many touches as Woodhead would have if it was Matthews Woodhead. I think it's going to be skewed a little bit more towards Matthews. I think they're going to go up early, and they're just going to let Matthews kind of get back into the swing of things and give him the ball as much as they can.
So Keenan Allen, then let's look at a wide receiver against Oakland.
Robot. Sorry. While you're fixing that, I'll talk about Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, before, let me look at his stats real quick. But before that game last week, or 2 weeks ago when they played Miami, he had a decent day at 4 for 47. But the 2 weeks prior, he had double digits. In his last 2 weeks, he looked really good against the Broncos. I just feel like people are forgetting that this guy is really good, and he, other than Gates, is really Rivers' favorite target. And
I don't think people are forgetting how good he is because we're still playing Keenan Allen. Who's forgetting it is freaking Phillip Rivers.
I know it. I just feel like, just for me at least, like just from talking to people all week about football all the time at this point now, that like I haven't had a Chargers question in I think maybe 4 weeks, and it's just one of those, like, obviously the bye It kind of hurts that with people kind of forgetting about things and just how awful they looked in Week 9. But I feel like I haven't heard anything about the Chargers in almost 2 weeks at this point, and I just think this is one of those games where people are going to be like, oh yeah, right, the Chargers are in the NFL and they're pretty good. Oh, okay, cool. So I think this is one of those situations where San Diego's just going to click on all cylinders and just try as hard as they can to embarrass Oakland because they are. I just think they're pissed about giving up 4 touchdowns to Carr last time they played them.
And I can see that. I can hope for that. Let's just recap. Keenan Allen going for 4,500 in DraftKings, 6,400 in FanDuel. I mean, again, you saw what he did last year. Blew up. He's got double-digit targets in 2 of the last 3 games, and the last one, the one that he didn't have double digits, he had 9. So the targets are there. The conversion isn't. We've seen him do better the past several weeks. He only has one touchdown on the year, though. I mean, I'm still not really all that confident in him. I think the matchup is there, but I'm not all that confident that Allen gets into the end zone.
Well, I don't necessarily think he'll get in the end zone, but as he's a PPR guy. He's one of those guys that we don't have to get him in the end zone for double-digit points. And for 4,500, somebody that has a pretty solid shot at double digits on any given week for that kind of price, I think is a good play.
All right,
we can move on.
Move on to Washington and Tampa. Washington coming off a bye, hosting the Bucs. In saying that, we've got to look at people who are playing the Bucs. So let's look at RG3, 6,300 in DraftKings, 7,400 in FanDuel. RG3 is very erratic thus far this year when he plays. I mean, you've always got that injury risk when he plays, but you've got the ability to scramble. He can chuck the ball deep. Tampa Bay can give up passes deep. Not my favorite play of the week, but he's probably middle of the road. I wouldn't mind having too much exposure to him. What are your expectations here, Alex?
Well, I just think that they lost that game against the Vikings, right? They lost the last game, the first game he came back at Minnesota. They lost that game, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think
they had it won and basically lost it, like handed it away. Yeah.
I will say this: with the bye week and having 2 weeks to have that whole team just kind of not necessarily away from the media, but just kind of to themselves a little bit more because of the left. A little less pressure during the bye week. I just feel like this team is going to turn on him. It's just going to happen. There were rumblings coming out before he was given the start.
Already has.
No,
yeah.
I think that 2 more weeks of that, and there's always that chance that in 2 weeks he could have figured it out. He could maybe start targeting Reed. He can get Deshaun deep. He can target Garcon a lot, like the way we thought the offense was going to run. But again, 50-50 play. As a tournament play, roll the dice because he's going against the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers are terrible, and he could have a bad day and still put up 20-plus points.
Exactly what I'm getting at. Yeah, I'd stay away from him in a 50-50 because you're not guaranteed anything when he gets the ball, especially, like I said, with that injury risk. Now, Alfred Morris, however, 5,400 in DraftKings, 7,300 in FanDuel, had a decent game against the Vikings. He got into the end zone, twice, I believe. Do we think he can do the same thing against Tampa?
All I have to say is that Steven Jackson scored a touchdown against the Buccaneers. Plug in Morris. Plug him in. Let's go.
I think that's all we need to see there. So let's move on there. And just note that you did mention Garcon and Jackson. We didn't have them here as value picks, but wide receiver against the Bucs. Take a look at the injury list again this week. Alteron Werner was out for the Bucs this week. This past week contributed definitely to Julio having a big game, so keep an eye on that. If are those injuries in the Bucs secondary still, then Jackson and Garcon are nice plugs this week as well. Let's move to the next game, Cleveland and Houston, where the Texans travel to the Browns. Terrence West going for 4,400 in DraftKings, 6,600 in FanDuel. There is a three-headed monster out there, like we mentioned, but West got the vast majority of the carries, especially in the fourth quarter last week. So we have to assume he's going to get the same this week. Again, you run that risk of them going with the hot hand, but West played well, 20-plus carries. Houston's run defense, absolutely terrible. The matchup's there for you. At that price as well, especially in DraftKings, $4,400. I mean, you got to like him to get into the end zone, right?
Yeah, I actually like Terrence West this week. I just think that just because kind of what we've seen over the past 2 weeks, and I saw a comment, I think it was either today or yesterday or some point after the Sunday games, that Tate kind of said that he's unhappy with his role kind of not being the workhorse again, but that he'll kind of deal with it for the good of the team because they're winning, and like he has to kind of throw the caveat, but we're winning, like it's fine. But I don't think Tate's healthy, and I think there's a reason that he's not, and it's because West is now the guy because Tate struggled for 3 straight weeks. West got his opportunity in week 9, and he really kind of flourished. And then I don't want to say he had a great game Thursday night because all 3 of them got in the end zone, but they all didn't really look good. But of all 3, in terms of running the ball, West looked the best, and I think that's going to continue. The usage rates, he out-touched Tate both weeks, out-yardaged. He just everything better for West than Tate right now. I was talking to while we were watching the game, where I was talking to a friend about this. I think West is a better runner for an Alex Mack less offensive line. And what I mean by that is Tate kind of played in that Houston offense with Gary Kubiak where it was more zone blocking. So you kind of rely a lot more on Alex Mack getting to his assignments and doing things for that line to create space, whereas West is just, he looks like an angry runner. He's going to hit the hole, and it doesn't matter who's blocking for him. He's going to say, make me a lane, I'm going to run through it. Whereas Tate's more of a patient runner, wait for that kind of explode through it. But with the way this offensive line is right now, I think West is the better fit just because of no Alex Mack. With Alex Mack, Tate is the guy.
I'd agree there. The question is whether or not Mike Pettin agrees, and that's where your risk comes in, right? We see West as a better runner. This past week, they saw West as a better runner, although he was the last of the running backs to actually get in the end zone. So you have that inherent risk with it. Again, a lot of people I read out there are staying away from the Browns until there's another injury or a clear number one. But I think for all intents and purposes, West against a poor Houston defense, 4,400 in DraftKings, 6,600 in FanDuel. LaShawn McCoy ran for 100-plus against them 2 weeks ago, so just keep that in mind.
I love how we're throwing in LaShawn McCoy now. It's kind of like, LaShawn McCoy. I hate it.
After seeing what he did against Carolina, he was pathetic. And
it wasn't just him, though. They gave Sproles the ball.
Him.
They didn't need to run the ball. It was just a stupid game.
Still pathetic.
I can't believe I watched the whole thing.
Still pathetic. So let's just leave it at that. Move on to the next game. New England traveling to Indy. I highlighted here Shane Vereen, 5,500 in DraftKings, 6,500 in FanDuel. We've seen all season that there's no pattern to how the Patriots are using their running backs, right? So Vereen, low floor, high ceiling pick here, tournament play, I think. He's going to get you those receptions out of the backfield if he gets the right snaps, right? I think we're going to see a very high-scoring game Sunday night, so I think Vereen's going to be used heavily out of the backfield with those receptions, more so than the past couple weeks when we've seen guys who is it, Jonas Gray, I think, getting almost 20 carries. Vereen not really getting many, so I think you're going to see the tempo turned up, Vereen used more out of the backfield. My opinion there. What do you think about that, Alex? Or can we move on to the next guy?
I've said it all season long. I don't trust Vereen week to week tournament play. If you really feel like it, go for it. But he is the definition of zero level floor, super high upside. He can go it could go either way any given week. It doesn't matter what the opponent is, if it's a good matchup or a bad matchup. It's either 3 points or it's 28. So do what you want with Vereen. I'm not going to recommend him.
Okay. Next game, San Francisco
Also,
traveling.
I'm about to die. Give me a second so you talk about the next guy. Just give me a minute.
Next game, San Francisco traveling to the Giants. We've got Frank Gore going up against the Giants defense that just gave up a record day to Seattle's offense. Seattle's quarterback, Russell Wilson, like I said, had 100 yards rushing. Marshawn Lynch had 4 touchdowns. Not going to say Gore's going to do the same thing, but you got to at least look at Gore this week. 4,500 on DraftKings, still 7,000 on FanDuel, so that's a high price on FanDuel. Just keep an eye out there. DraftKings a lot more recency bias where Gore hasn't done much the past few weeks. He did get into the end zone this past week, I think, but hasn't done much in the yards department the past couple of weeks. So very discounted on DraftKings. Take a look at him there, but FanDuel, I'd still shy away. Going to flip the script then and look at Rashad Jennings. It's 4,700 on DraftKings, 6,600 on FanDuel. If he does come back this week, you just got to keep an eye on him. I don't know if I'd recommend him really yet because we don't know if he's going to be 100%. We don't know if he's going to really be used completely in that offense just yet. But we've seen the offense with him and we've seen the offense without him. It is a very, very stark contrast. I'd like Rashad Jennings to come back and actually make a difference. That San Francisco run D is pretty good. So, again, I'm not necessarily recommending him this week, but keep an eye on him in the coming weeks as he gets reacclimated to game speed, as he gets reintegrated into that offense. I like him a lot. Probably not this week, but next week. Now, let's get to, since Alex is back, let's get to his boy.
Wait. Let me jump in on Jennings.
What?
I just think that if he's not 100%, he's not playing. So I think that if he is 100%, I think if he is in that lineup, he is 100%, and that it is Tom Coughlin needs to get him the football to get this offense going, and I don't feel like there's going to be a lot of people playing him this week. That's also another thing that I know you contrarian guys like a lot, but Jennings is a good running back, and he made this offense click when he was in the lineup, and then when he went down, they've kind of just plummeted with Andre Williams. Rashad Jennings is going to get you catches. He's going to get you yards. He's going to get you goal line looks, especially with Hillis out because of the concussion. Jennings is a good play. I mean, I know it's a tough matchup, but Jennings getting all of those touches equals fantasy points. And for that cheap, even in a tough matchup, he can still put up points.
So it all depends on your definition of 100%, right? I'm personally, so this is the exact reason why DFS is so great, right? I don't like Rashad Jennings this week, so I'm going to stay away from him. You like him, great contrarian play. You may have him in a lineup, but next week we both can love him and both have him in the lineup again. So take whoever's opinion you want. My recommendation is to just keep an eye on the injury reports out there. See what they're saying about Rashad Jennings. He's already late back from the injury, so that's why I'm leery of using him until I see that he is 100% and back up to game speed. One guy that I think you have a man crush on, but not as big as Johnny, is Larry Donnell. He's going for 3,900 in DraftKings, 5,400 in FanDuel. He's Patrick Willis out now for the year potentially. If Rashad Jennings is back, if Larry Donnell can get back to his receiving ways at the beginning of the season, do you think he's a play this week?
No, because he didn't do anything against one of the worst defenses against tight ends. These defenses from the NFC West scare me for the Giants. The Giants just aren't a match for these teams. And I think it's the Odell Beckham show now. I mean, Donnell was the guy when they couldn't get Victor without Cruz and now Beckham in. They are getting Beckham involved. And Beckham looked great up against arguably the best corner in the game, and Richard Sherman. He got 100 yards. I think he had 6 for 100, or that was in the third quarter he had 6 for 100. Odell Beckham is a freakish talent. I mean, a lot of people forgot about him because he was hurt so much early on the year and he just couldn't get on the field. But once he did, man, does he look good. And that takes away targets from Donnell, and that's just another person for him to compete with. For Rashad Jennings is back. That's even less targets for Donnell. So I don't have a man crush on Donnell. I kind of like him because Eli loves his security blanket and his tight end, but I think Odell Beckham is kind of morphing into that security blanket more so than Donnell.
Okay, you did have a man crush on him, so don't act like you didn't.
No, I didn't. I said I liked him for
You
some
liked
weeks,
him.
but I don't love him. I don't like his physical talents. You want to talk man
So
crush? You want to talk about my man crush? Let's talk about
we're
my
gonna
man.
talk about your real man crush here. 4,000 in DraftKings, 5,900 in FanDuel. Travis Kelce going up against a Henry Meebaneless Seattle defense. Tell me, as our last guy of the night, go ahead.
Travis Kelce against Seattle. Seattle gave up 2 touchdowns to Mike Rivera. Donnell, whatever. Go away, Donnell. But they suck against the tight end. They didn't really even look that good against Donnell. Just Eli looked worse. So they didn't really have an opportunity to throw him the ball as much. But this is one of those games where Jamal Charles isn't going to run the ball as freely as you would want him to because they're going up against the Seahawks. They are going to be forced to throw the ball, and the open lanes are going to be for Travis Kelce, and I think Reed knows that finally. And I think the way it's kind of been going is he has a great week, he has a terrible week, and then when people kind of maybe forget about him but not really forget about him, then he explodes. So this is a week that I see him getting at least 5 catches, maybe 8 targets, and at least 40 yards.
Let's not forget that this game is in Arrowhead, right? I just want to double check that. Yes, it's in Kansas City. That defense is not the same on the road when it can't rely on the 12th man to obliterate the offense's ability to make all checks and calls at the line. I like Kansas City's offense this week from a tight end perspective. Absolutely love Kelce this week. Definitely going to have exposure to him. I think that if Andy Reid is smart and continues what he's doing, he gets Kelce involved a little bit more, gets him those screens, gets him those quick outs, take advantage of the fact that they can't cover the tight end very well. Do what you did against New England and get Kelce the ball, especially in the end zone. In saying that,
Kelce
that's our final value pick of the night. Let's take a very, very quick look at some questions here that are coming through the chat room that we haven't answered already. Let's see. We've got a lot of complaints about Andre Holmes, LaShawn McCoy. Let's see, Big Ben.
All right, you can't complain about McCoy because McCoy was like 70% or more
Okay,
owned in everything.
stop being a homer. McCoy puts up
No,
0 points,
no,
puts up no points. You can complain about him all you want.
you can complain, but everyone had McCoy this week. It's not like we were the only ones that said, "Oh my God, you have to play McCoy," and he was 5% owned and sucked. 70% of DraftKings people, in my experience this week, I'm looking at my 50-50s. I thought that touchdown was going to help me, and then I looked, and he was 70% owned in every 50-50 tournament I was in. So everyone played McCoy. So yes, you can, sure, go ahead and hate us for
In
McCoy.
50-50s, but in tournament plays, I bet it was more like maybe 30%.
I will look.
So it either way, if a guy doesn't put up points, you can complain.
Fine.
Do you think Michael Rivera has a good matchup? We spoke about Rivera earlier, I believe, right? What do you think of Beckham this week? You just touched on him. Definitely think he's getting the looks. He proved it in Seattle. So I like him at home against San Francisco, especially for that reason.
All right, in my tournaments, 40%, 42%, and 32% owned for McCoy.
No, I was right. I was pretty close.
So that's a lot. That's still a lot.
We touched on Redskins offensive players. Ooh, Greg's got a few guys. Boom, 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 boom. Cecil Shorts, the Jags are on a bye this week, I believe. So you're staying away from Cecil. Stay away from everyone on bye weeks.
Yeah, please don't
um,
play them. I don't even think they're options. You can't.
they're not even option. Yeah, they're not
Not even
even
allowed to
available.
play
So it's
people on
okay.
bye.
That's okay. C.J. Anderson. I'm gonna touch real quick. What I want to say about
Yeah,
C.J. Anderson is look at who's going. I'm staying away from him because
no, I think Hillman's out for 2 to 3 weeks. I read earlier today.
Hillman is out for 2 to 3 weeks, but Moneyball's back. So
True.
we don't know who's getting the touches there, and that's why I'm staying away from him. You're not given, at least right now anyway, we're not given the warm and fuzzy that anybody's really the number one back there.
Yeah,
I'm
any
staying
three of
away.
those guys, any three of those guys could be the guy for the next 2 weeks.
Exactly. So I'm
You
staying
just
away
don't
from
know. You got to wait for
both CJ and Ball this week. Let's see.
or even watch Jawan Thompson be the guy this week.
Yeah, another option. Great. Isaiah Crowell. I'm staying away from him as well because he is the third back. I think he was the third back really
He's
to
the
get
third
the
guy now.
carries in Cleveland. And
I think
it's just we touched on it, right? That backfield is just unpredictable. It's yeah, okay, West got, he got everything between the 20s, but once they got into the red zone, Crowell got the ball, then Tate got the ball, or whichever way it was. Then West got the ball himself. I don't know what the rhyme or reason is there, so I'm staying away from Crowell as well. Jarvis Landry, on the other hand,
I just don't like him going up against the Bills. That's my only concern.
yeah, the Bills secondary is actually pretty good. Brandon Albert now gone for the year, so I think that puts a lot of pressure. The Bills able to get good pressure on the quarterback.
Mary Williams had a field day. Him and Darius are just going to go off this week.
I think so. So I'm not touching Tannehill. I'm not touching Landry.
Oh, speaking of defenses, then we forgot to mention the Bills' defense could be a decent play this week.
We didn't touch on them because we stayed out of the Thursday game. But yeah, very good point.
They'll get you sacks. They will get
Very
you
good.
sacks. I promise you at
Very
least
good
3 sacks from the Bills.
Dale asks for our best big money wide receivers. We're going to touch on them Thursday usually.
Julio!
Greg asks which QB will have a monster day this weekend. We're going to touch on that Thursday as well. Cook or Donnell this week? I would say Cook.
Yeah, just because of the matchup.
Because of the matchup, because of the garbage time. I think they're very similar, to be honest with you. Because I think, like I said, Donnell may get some opportunities. Willis not there, but Aldon Smith comes back. They've got a couple of good linebackers there, regardless. And like you said, Eli all over the place. If Jennings comes back and is 100, I like Donnell, but otherwise I'll say Cook, just because you have to imagine again the Broncos are going to go up. Again, they're going to have to give up garbage time points. So there's that. Let's see. Next up, Ahmad Bradshaw and Reggie Wayne. Yeah, anybody on the Colts offense. We didn't see them as value picks because their prices are a little bit high up there. But
Reggie Wayne kind of not really high. It's kind of more of a value for sure. But it's the Patriots. I just don't know how this game's gonna go. It's just one of those.
It's in Indy, and I think Indy, Luck's again gonna put up 300 plus yards because that's just
you
what
don't know where those points. You don't know who.
But you don't. Yeah, you don't know if he's gonna give them 150 plus yards to T.Y. Hilton. Is Reggie Wayne gonna get 100? Is
Andrew Luck gonna rush for 2 touchdowns this week?
That could also happen.
I would put my money on that than trying to pick who's going to be the guy to get everything.
That could also happen. Biggie says, you guys forgot a value pick. Eric Ebron. Really?
No, we didn't. He's a value pick at his price. Calvin's back. That means Calvin gets the targets, Tate gets the secondary, and then the backs kind of rotate. So no, Eric Ebron he didn't do anything when Calvin was out. He's not going to do anything with Calvin in taking 10 plus targets a game.
Eric Ebron for me has to get the starting job in order to really get called a value pick. So that's me. Is Wayne going to get Revis? Probably not. I would think Revis lines up on the outside. So Wayne lines up on the inside. I would imagine they really put Wayne on Hilton, since Hilton's the more dynamic guy. Reggie
You
Wayne
messed
is.
that up. You're talking about. You said Wayne on Hilton. That just doesn't work.
Sorry, Revis. I think they're going to put Revis on Hilton because he's the more dynamic guy at this point. Wayne is 36 years old, 30 some odd years old. I think whoever's opposite Revis, I can't remember right now. Brandon Browner.
Yeah.
I think he takes Wayne, and either way, it's gonna. I mean, they're both tough matchups, but I don't think Revis goes on Wayne this week.
I feel like he could rotate though. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah. I think we've got a couple more questions, but we're at our time. The questions are revolving around Big Ben, Steelers offense versus Tennessee. Do we think they can have a bounce back game? I think absolutely.
Titans are so bad.
But
They're so bad.
The Titans are pretty bad. The game I think is in Tennessee though. Right? Why can't I find this game? Oh, because it's Monday night. Oh God, that's the Monday night matchup.
Yep. How
Yeah,
many? That's
it's
more
in
like.
Tennessee.
But shockingly, that could be a better game than both primetime games this weekend. Like it won't be, and it'll be pretty. It might be more boring because there's going to be less points scored, but at least it'll be closer, and you won't have to turn the TV off at halftime unless you're just praying for fantasy points like we were last night, just yelling back and forth through text message. What is going on? This is the worst thing ever. We were freaking out.
True. It's very true. So here's my thing, right? We touched on Rivers earlier. In talking about the San Diego game, we think he'll be just fine this week and have a nice bounce back from that debacle in Miami. But for Big Ben and the Steelers, I'd like to defer those questions to Thursday because I don't think any lineups are really going to revolve around them this week like they did the past couple weeks. So we'll talk about some Steelers guys and our favorite picks there on Thursday. In the meantime, please go to fantasyknuckleheads.com, click on Daily Fantasy Football. You can visit and purchase the optimizer tool, look at our optimizer lineups. You can read a lot of DFS info. You can also read a bunch of other info. If you're playing regular leagues, feel free. Play the regular leagues. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at MNMilano, at Alex Hanowitz. Subscribe on YouTube. Click the channel. And we will catch you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in, and good luck if you're playing in a primetime lineup. Take care, guys.
Read my articles.